What's going on? You are tuned in to the season 1 finale. And what a ride it's been. We went to San Francisco, Chicago, and New York. We got advice from legendary marketers, creators, and entrepreneurs. We laughed, drank wine, shot hoops, and had a damn good time doing it. This has by far been the biggest, most challenging, and most rewarding project of my career. And thank you for hanging with me and supporting me through season 1. I couldn't have done it without you. I'm starting to plan for season 2 and got some exciting stuff cooking already. If you have a guest that you want featured on the show, or if you want to sponsor season 2, give me a shout at yo@thereader.co. That's yo@thereader.co. And for today's finale, we're throwing it back to Chicago. As you might remember, we rented out a basketball court and talked to some of the most creative people in the city. We had RajNATION, the top B2B rapper and chief pitch artist at the startup Hype Man, Jen Allen-Knuth, keynote speaker, sales messaging extraordinaire, and the founder of DemandJen, plus the copywriting king himself, Eddie Schleyner, the founder of Very Good Copy. So what do all 4 of us have in common? We've all bet on ourselves, both in our business and our careers. We're all content creators, and we all have passions outside of work that we prioritize, from our kids, to rap music, to travel. And today is a special episode because we got all 3 Chicago guests together for a group discussion on some big topics.
This is Read Between the Lines, the show for people who want to achieve phenomenal results.
Are you ready? Let's go hang with the group.
I'm excited because I have some of the most talented and creative people from Chicago here in this room on this court with me. And so I just want to say thank y'all for showing up and showing out today.
Are you kidding me? Look at this. Of course we're here. Who says no to this?
That's true.
It's going to be fun.
Here's the offer. Hey, I rented out a basketball court and the whole purpose is to just film a conversation with you. Are you in?
Yeah.
That's a hard sell.
I think Very Good Copy over here is like, that's a clear and direct offer.
To be honest, I didn't know anything about this until...
I didn't know this would be recorded.
I didn't know we were going to be on a basketball court. You were just kind of like, trust me, and I trust you. I do trust you.
There you go.
You have excellent taste, so I knew you were gonna show up.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I did. We went pretty big. Well, I had to, you know. It was a good opportunity. So, hey, we're here to talk about creativity, betting on yourself, and audience growth. Something that all of you and myself know a little bit about. So that's where we're gonna go. We're gonna have a little bit of fun, learn something from each other, and that's it. So one thing that I always admire about all of you is not just the following that you have, because I know follower is important, but that's just a metric. I don't think of it just as like your personal brand. I think of it as your digital reputation. So I'm curious, Raj, I'll start with you first. Like, how do you think about building your digital reputation, and how does it help you run your business at the startup Hype Man?
Well, I think digital reputation is interesting because I think there's probably a decent subset of people who are like, well, this is my persona when I'm in front of a camera or when I'm online, when I'm creating content, versus this is who I am when I'm off camera, offline, et cetera. And I personally cannot like function that way. It's like whatever you see is what you're gonna get. And if it's off camera, the only thing is it might just be like I'm turned down like two dials on the volume knob. Mm-hmm. But it's kind of all the same thing through and through, which, I mean, I like that I can bring that, but I also don't know a different way other than to just be like, well, this is who I am, let me bring that to the table. What I do think is, I noticed a particular shift was, so like, if you take my sort of online profile, if you will, up until like 3-4 years ago, my headshot was me wearing a blazer, leaning against like a brick wall or whatever, or against a piece of drywall, like with like the standard, like, you know.
That's the classic LinkedIn profile picture.
Right? Like,
yeah.
And you know, I was doing a lot of my stuff, but this is why I think like image is so interesting and important. And I don't mean that from like the vain way. I mean it from the perspective of like, I kind of felt like that's the image I had to live up to, was guy in a blazer leaning against a wall that has this element of like corporate tilt to it. And then I did this photo shoot a few years ago with my buddy Greg Rothstein, amazing photographer. And like I had this vision of like what I wanted to like wear in it and kind of like how I wanted it to go. And he just kind of like really like took that and amplified it to 100. And that's where like, you know, like the photo that I have now is like, I'm wearing this leather jacket. The t-shirt I'm wearing under that is a pro wrestling shirt. I'm doing like the finger guns kind of thing. And then that whole photo shoot is just like different elements of that. And one of the photos that came out of that was me like literally like running and jumping at the camera.
Is it on your website right now?
Yeah, like that's,
love
you know,
that.
I
love
use
picture.
that pretty often in a lot of different things. And that's the image that I feel I am living up to now, which feels a lot better. And that's what kind of enables, I think, a lot of the creative elements too, is, well, who am I supposed to be? Am I supposed to be the guy who's like wearing the blazer, feels a little bit stiff in the process and not totally comfortable? Or the guy who feels like my shoulders can relax, who can like smile, who can point to the camera, who can clearly is like kind of having fun in the process, even though it's a still photo. And if I can build off of that, that just feels like it's taking what I want to be and just enabling it even more through everything that's happening digitally.
You know, it's interesting. The first time I met you was I was at a Sales Assembly Remix event, and I was in the audience. And it was like, you know, it's all CROs there. And it was in the middle of the day, and they brought you on, and you got up and rapped in front of the room. And I'm like, right now, it's like that point in the day where everybody's like itching to lunch, and we're just like sitting there, and everyone's like being really nice and formal because no one's had any drinks yet. Mm-hmm. And you got up there and like totally changed the vibe of that room. If I think about that, if I had gone and looked you up on LinkedIn and you're like in a blazer leaning against, so I would have been like, this is a totally different person. Like that energy that you transfer is so much more like what was my experience seeing you in action.
I knew, by the way, I knew we were going to be friends coming out of that day because you and I was like, oh, she's also like kind of a geek where like, if it's interesting educational content, she'll sit right in the front. Because I also sat right in the front too. Yeah. And I was like, okay, we're both like sit in the front of the room, kind of like, you know, teacher's pet kind of people.
I just completely, I'm like, he has some balls to get up there and like be like, we're going to rap and you're going to stand up and you're going to dance. And sure enough, everybody did. And I thought it was so cool watching how that room's energy just totally shifted because no one knew each other and everyone's uncomfortable. And you, like, I just thought that was a really cool way to meet someone.
Well, and vice versa. I've seen, like, you know, I think probably the next year, you were doing your talk for Lavender, and you were decked out in like a lavender jumpsuit with lavender Jordans, right?
Yeah.
Like, that, I think, that's a very unique take, and not everyone has the confidence to do that. But the person who does, and you can tell they're owning it, you have a respect for them, and you don't see like, you can tell when someone feels uncomfortable.
Yeah.
In what they're doing, whether it's the creative endeavor or even just literally the outfit. And if you, but the opposite of that is when you feel comfortable in it, everyone almost like, they match that, they relax themselves and they match that vibe too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the fact that you got up and rapped, and you know, I know you're good at it, but the fact that you put yourself out there like that, and you just, you had the confidence to present like that, that gets everybody riled up too.
Yes.
You know, that gets everybody excited that here's somebody that's, you know, going out and doing this pretty brave, courageous thing. Even if that's something that you are constantly doing, something that you're known for, that's not an easy thing to do. At least it wouldn't be for me or the average person.
So you're not ready for the rap segment of this?
What?
But I think it's like you play to your skill, right?
Yeah.
Like, and you're very good with the written word. And I think what's very comfortable for me is, hey, go rap in front of these people. If I was like, hey, write a one-page blog post in the next hour, you probably are like, okay, I don't feel scared to do that.
Yeah.
No, especially if you give me a time limit, you know.
You like the time limit? You like,
I like
the pressure writing?
Well, it's just about like, if you give somebody a time limit, it's like Parkinson's law, like work expands to fill the time that you give it. So if you give somebody an hour to write a blog post or an article or what have you, the benefit there is that they don't have the luxury of like making it complicated, you know? Like doing creative work is all about, I think, making decisions and sticking to them and going in that direction. And if you have a timer, then you have to make that decision and you have to go in that direction, and you don't have the luxury of like second guessing yourself. If somebody said, hey, write the same article in 24 hours or a week, then you have all that time to go back and say, no, this isn't good enough or this isn't right. And a lot of that is just the stories we tell ourselves, you know? The audience doesn't really get that part.
I'm curious, like your creative process for your keynotes. Because you've got like a few on deck, right? Like I saw your website, you've got like at least 5, I think.
Yeah, I think.
What's your creative process for a new one?
But in the beginning, it was stupid. It was like, what is your unique thing? And let me build something special for you, unique flower. And then I realized, man, that's a terrible way to spend your time. It's just like death by PowerPoint. And so now it's really like, I know what I want to say. I know what I think needs to be said. And it's more about how do I have a conversation with them that gets them to see it that way. So I'm almost like leading them down a path that they want. But I think the thing that's really important to me is someone who's sat through plenty of presentations that I was just like, this is missing the point, or it doesn't feel like it's relevant to me, is I'm really trying to put myself in the shoes of a salesperson and a buyer at that business. So if I was looking at this piece of tech, or I'm looking at joining this company, what would make it feel different for me, and what do I have to attack? So I'm big on using my slides to say, let me preempt an objection instead of just wait till someone throws their hands up, bombs your presentation, is like, well, this doesn't apply to us because of this. I find that when I can seed those things early and be like, now, here's where you might be pushing back because you think it's different. Let's talk about that use case. So that's really now where I spend most of my time, is thinking about what are those potential objections and then seeding those so I don't get bombs in the middle of them.
Do you get like a lot of hecklers or like vocal doubters?
Oh, for sure.
Really?
I mean, think about the
During your
audience.
talks? Yeah.
For sure. Think about the audience. It's sales kickoffs with salespeople who have large egos. I'm one of them, I can say it. And I remember there was one I did last year. There was like 500 people in this room, and this guy threw his hand up and basically tried to like disagree with the entire premise of my thing. And I always think in that moment, you've got to figure out, like, is it good intention or bad intention, right? Like, this person is really thoughtfully skeptical, and they're just like raising a point that I should have considered. I have no issues whatsoever being like, you know what, that's a great call out, and I totally missed it. I don't think you have to be right when you're on stage. I don't think you have to know all the answers. More often than not, though, it's the person who just wants to talk and be heard. And in those cases, I find like it's tempting to want to be like, well, here's where you're wrong. But I can't, right? Then like that's not who I am. It's out of alignment with me as a person. Yeah. So I think in those moments, it's like you acknowledge and you pivot, because otherwise you lose the room, you lose that person. It's just not worth it, in my opinion.
Can you give an example of like what they've objected with and how you acknowledge and pivot?
Yes. So last year was when I was still working for Challenger, doing Challenger keynotes. And you know, the Challenger research talks about how relationship builders are the least likely to be successful in sales, and you really want to be a challenger and all this stuff. This guy threw his hands up and he's like, I totally disagree. This is a relationship-based business. My clients love me, and that's why they do business. I'm not going to be the one to tell this dude, like, your clients don't love you that much. Yeah. Like, your clients are fine with you. It's not why they buy from you. And so I had to just acknowledge and say, you know, for sure relationships are important. It's how you build relationships that matter, though. I bet what you did to build that relationship was this, this, and this. And then I took it back to Challenger. So it's like, in a way, I'm almost complimenting him. Whether or not he deserved it or not doesn't really matter. But I find that, like, if you make enemies of your audience, like, what are you doing?
Well, it's smart to neutralize and like agree, because you also don't know. I like pointed at me because I go into like, when you see the stand-up comics, like one of my favorite things is a heckler that just gets demolished. Like, you know, they're quick, and so
they always do.
It's like, it's so fun to watch, but I know, but it's different for you because at a stand-up comic, everyone's paying to see you on stage, and the heckler is actually ruining the show. Versus your thing is like, this is a team, and you don't know how much clout that guy or gal has. So if you Uno reverse and slam them, you might actually have pissed off 40, 50 more people in the audience.
100%.
And so that's a Devin temptation, but it's smarter to like acknowledge and neutralize. And I think too, you probably earn some respect, because it's like a lot of those salespeople don't want to be up there on stage getting heckled or doubted. And so if you can maintain your composure, make them come around your way, and then continue the presentation, to me, that's like, all right, like, you might want to be quiet and listen. She actually knows what she's doing up there.
I bet that person probably was paying even more attention for the second half after that.
Yeah.
Because you acknowledged their, you know, and you validated them essentially, right?
I agree. I totally agree with that. Yeah.
Eddie, you have a very large following. You have over 100,000 LinkedIn followers,
Yeah, what's
60,
your
70,000 newsletter subscribers. And yet you're still somehow the most even-keeled dude. How do you handle naysayers, doubters, and trolls online?
To be honest, I don't get that many people saying mean stuff to me.
They're very nice.
I think it's probably because my content is generally, wholesome, and,
It's true.
I talk about my kids and shit. I talk about my family. And I'm talking about universal truths. I'm putting out universal truths that I learned from, really reputable sources. copywriters of the last generation, and the folks that have really taught it, taught this this generation of marketers and copywriters how to write and how to think. And so I don't think I'm saying very controversial things. I'm just framing them in a way that's maybe more digestible and a little more entertaining. And so I don't get that many hecklers that are like, hey, you're challenging the way that I think or the way that I work. Every now and then I do get some hate mail, and if I find it, like, if I think they have a point, I'll respond, but usually I just don't respond.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's healthy.
I just don't say anything.
My favorite is when, so sometimes someone subscribed to my stuff, but they don't remember how they subscribed. And they'll be like,
They're mad at me.
yeah, they're like, take me off your list. And I'll reply and I'll be like, there's a giant unsubscribe button at the bottom of the email.
Yeah.
You have the power to hit that button.
It's all you do.
Or like if it's like a cold email that I might send someone and they'll be like, how did you get my email? I'll reply and be like, sir or ma'am, I'll be like, it's the 21st century and it's the internet. You should be thankful I don't have your credit card number. Depending on the scenario or like the venue or arena,
Yeah.
like I'm okay to like dish. If I'm on stage, I'm not gonna pull that stuff
Right.
and like alienate the audience. But if it's like those like 1-to-1, I'm like, I can level with you and I can go toe to toe with it.
I like that.
I'm petty.
I
got time today.
But it is like a personality thing. I'm not very I'm not a confrontational person, I think, and I generally try to avoid it, and so it's just uncomfortable for me, and so I don't know.
I mean, I know you're not confrontational, but I just figured this: if you have an audience of that size and you post as much as you do, it's the internet. Like, people say things all the time that aren't logical. Like, I made a post, I was like, this 42-word template helped me, get people to reply who've ghosted me. The comments were like, there's actually 41 words. Actually, there's 43 words. And there's the camp of just arguing over how many words were in the email, which I counted and was like, well, I guess it depends on if you count like, hi, Jen. Like, if you count those words. But like, I'm just saying, people will argue over anything on the internet. So I thought you might, have some experience with that.
Yeah, I think LinkedIn is its own kind of animal. Like, that's my main platform. I'm on Twitter and but like generally I share on LinkedIn, and LinkedIn is not an anonymous platform. Everybody is accountable for what they say. Now you're getting verified on LinkedIn. Like, I think LinkedIn is kind of a nicer corner of the internet maybe than like you go to a Reddit, or like I've definitely posted some of my stuff on Reddit and got people shit on me. Yeah.
But I actually love that you don't fall into that bucket. I mean, we were talking about this before, like, of in order to get really big, you have to be like so provocative and so controversial. Like, you're a good example of someone who just writes really good content, and you teach really well and really effectively, and people buy it. So it's like, you don't have to be this like disruptor and this big, brute force on the internet to get people to grow to your following.
I appreciate you, Jen. I mean, I've also, it's been a long time. Very good copy. I've been doing it for 10 years, and so it's a matter of like consistency and just like showing up. And so, it depends who you ask. I don't know. Maybe somebody out there would be like, yeah, 100,000 or whatever you got in 10 years isn't really that much.
Haters.
Yeah.
I don't know who would say that. They're haters.
Well, one of the other reasons I invited all of you, and it was an easy choice to invite you folks here, is that you all have your own unique style. And Eddie has his own style, Raj, Jen. And so it's funny because you had mentioned it earlier, is like people like different. There's actually a very large appetite for different, whether it's the topic, delivery, what have you. But being different, making that choice to stand out, or just following your own kind of unique voice, it takes a lot of, I think, courage, especially in the digital era. So like, Raj, where do you get the courage to follow your different?
I think experience breeds confidence. And it's a lot harder to be different right out of the gate because you're just following what you've seen other people do. And as far as that's what's allowed. So I think in my own journey, there was probably always some hint of like, oh, this is like RajNation kind of stuff. But I was more and more following what else was out there for for a certain amount of time until you put out enough content, you get enough clients, you do enough work to where now you have something to stand on besides just, oh, it's my opinion that things should be this way or be done this way. So then when you have that, like that sort of foundation where you're like, hey, it's not just that I think this, it's that I've seen this work or I've experienced it work firsthand. Now you can start to push the envelope a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. And I think ultimately that just compounds over time to where you create that that style, that brand, that flavor that ends up being like uniquely you. It ends up being uniquely different. And I feel like most people don't get there because they don't allow themselves the time to gather the experience. They give up or they get out way too early. Like, I'm celebrating the release of your podcast and I expect it to be around for a while. And if it's not, I bet you have a strategic reason for it. The number of people who start a podcast and just give up after like 5 episodes, because either it's just like too much work or they're like, oh, I didn't get the audience I wanted. And it's like, well, yeah, no, duh. Unless you already are a celebrity, no one's going to be listening. No one cares what you have to say. And you have to shove it down people's throats that you're doing this thing. You have to keep reminding them, the podcast is out. There's this episode. Here's another episode. Here's how you listen. Here's how you follow, et cetera, et cetera. And because most people only get to that like 5th episode or that 5th blog post or whatever it might be, they never actually get a chance to develop what their voice is. I think when you had Chris Orlob on, I think he was like, only around like the 50th blog you write, will you start to crack at what your voice is?
Yep.
And I think that's so true. I don't know what the exact number is, but like you gotta have enough times doing it to know how because it's like, I think the initial outset is you're almost playing the role of someone who does that. And then all of a sudden the actor and the character become one versus playing the role of it. And that takes time.
Perfectly said, yeah. It's all work is derivative at first. Everybody has their favorite creator, their favorite artist, their favorite writer that they're emulating. They're trying to do what they've done and what they enjoy from them. And then over time you do it over and over and over again and you add a little bit of yourself, you add a little bit of an outside influence to that work and it becomes something different. And you do it over and over and over again and then eventually it's like, whoa, this is uniquely me, and then other people start to emulate you. It's like, I think Gilbert Gottfried, when he was asked,
why do you yell all the time?
Why do you sound like that? They were like, how do you find, it was about his voice actually. They were like, how do you find your voice? But they were talking about like his style on stage. And he's like, I don't know, you just go on stage 1 billion times, and all of a sudden, you are who you are, Yeah. And so, that was really well said, and it's a really comforting thought, I think, for a lot of creative people that are like, wow, I need to know exactly who I am from the get-go. I need to find myself right away. I need to stand out right away. No, it's a process. So.
And I think then it's not contrived either, right? Like if you let that thing happen. I mean, it's comforting. It probably also sucks. You're like, oh man, I got to put I got to put in all this time. But you do. You can't.
But it's also like, are you starting with the right intentions? Like, are you starting with the intention of getting 100,000 followers or making a living at this, or are you starting with the intention of, just doing something for the work and for the craft and like enjoying it, and enjoying that process? And if you do that, and you get into it for the right reasons, it can make a huge difference. Like Very Good Copy was never supposed to be what it is. I just did it to teach myself copywriting. And I kept all that stuff to myself. I hoarded it. Then eventually I put it out there,
Well, I think like to your point of like why, and you're not confrontational, and I know the stuff you post, it's like you kind of like have to be a jerk to not like Eddie Schleyner. Like you're like, if someone's like, yeah, I met Eddie and he's a real jerk and I'm using the PG-13 on this episode, it's like, dude, it's probably you actually that sucks, because Eddie's very kind, but it goes back to like your intention. Like, what are you really creating for? Are you creating to help people? Are you creating to hone your craft and enjoy that process? Or are you doing it for those vanity metrics, the validation from other people on the internet? And it can be felt when you're consuming that person's content, whether it's, their podcast, their written work, whatever. You can tell who's really in it and whose like passion is coming through. And I think that's something like you do so well, is like we were talking about. It's never the finger waggy, I'm exalted and I'm just trying to like, shout at you. it's like, yo, who are you really helping? Like, and what is your intent? You can feel that in people's work.
I think it also helps, like, I think when you write on the internet, trolls come with it, right? It's just a byproduct. It's like being a school bus driver and being like, but I don't like little kids. Like, well, then you're in the wrong freaking profession. Like, get out of that. And so I think to your point, it's interesting to hear you talk about it. It's like I got into writing because I was looking at all these beliefs and assumptions I had as a salesperson. I'm like, man, if I knew this 10 years earlier, I'd be rich, and I'm not. And so I wish I could go back. And so it became this really genuine thing of, I want other people who are running up against the same things to know what I wish I knew then. And so when you get someone that's like, this is a stupid idea or this doesn't work, I think it's so much easier just to let that slide off your back, because you're like, okay, if you don't want to buy, you don't buy into what I'm selling, that's fine, don't use it. But there's other people who will value it and it will help them. And I think that's the only way you can stay afloat with how many people are out there wanting to cut other people down.
Jen, you came from doing Challenger for a decade, right? And then you left Challenger for a hot second, you were on your own, and then you joined Lavender. You were at Lavender for half a year or a little bit longer, and then you kind of formally started DemandJen. Did you have any let me ask this in a more clear way. You have, I think, the most recent experience of going from employee to full-time entrepreneur, creator, et cetera. Did you have hesitation, or were you scared? Because for me, it was so long ago that I almost don't even remember what it was truly like. So how was that jump for you?
So we actually talked about this because when I left Challenger in December 2022, I was gonna go into my own business, and then I chickened out because I was like, man, you're just so used to having this anchor of, is it because it's me? Is it because I work for Challenger? Why is it that people bought from me or followed me or whatever? And so I chickened out after about a month, and I went to Lavender, and then I was saying to Devin, that feeling, that itch kind of never went away, and it just grew stronger and stronger. So the second time when I quit Lavender, I was like, I know I have to do it. I have to go all in, and I just have to accept the free fall. And that was the thing that was really scary for me, because when you work for a company for so long, it's security becomes this second nature thing of, I know even if I miss this quarter, I'm still gonna have a job, or if I don't sell this deal, I'll be okay. And it was that fear of the unknown, the fear of self-doubt, are people gonna wanna follow me if I'm not attached to this bigger thing? So I make no buts about it. I struggled with it big time. I would say, now when I talk to other people, it's you almost have to do that free fall, because when you announce that you've left and you're going off on your own and you're working on something you're so passionate about, people feed off that passion, but you just don't know it before you quit, because you don't get that reaction until you put that announcement up, I've left, and then people come in through the woodwork. So I think that was a lot harder than I appreciated when I initially quit.
Did you plan it, from the sense of, I'll give you a comparison,
Yeah.
right? I kind of accidentally fell into entrepreneurship, I don't know, 12 years ago, 11 years ago or so. I accidentally quit my job. I literally wasn't planning it.
How did you accidentally quit?
What is the talk track on that? I want to know.
That's usually it's because you got fired. But
No, I was not fired. So basically,
Please believe me.
I had actually gotten put on and survived and made it to the other side of a PIP.
Oh, dang.
yeah, respect. I've done the same.
And after I got I put in so much hustle during that time of being on the PIP, and then I made it through, and I finally could exhale. And I mean that almost very physiologically. I felt like someone was stepping on my chest for a solid 60 days. And then when I was okay, I could finally and breathe again. And I was like, wait, the only reason I did all that work was because they told me I couldn't, or they thought I couldn't.
Yeah.
So now that I've proved that I can, I realize I don't actually want to do this.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I kind of was, buoying for about a month, and then it was my birthday. Okay, it was December 3rd, and I had my weekly check-in with my boss, and she was traveling, so it was a phone call, and we were doing the standard pipeline review stuff. And so for everyone who doesn't know, I was in a sales role at this time, and we're doing the pipeline review, and it's kind of okay, how's this deal going? And I'm like, and then, okay, what new opportunities have you generated?
How's this deal? Pass.
Yeah, exactly, right? I'm like, she's like, what new opportunities are in the pipeline? I'm like, none really. This one could close, maybe. And I was like, and I go, don't know, I think I'm just kind of like done. I did not wake up that day being like, today I'm going to leave.
The truth just like came out.
Yeah,
of you.
it just came out. And so I was like, I think I'm just kind of like done. And there was probably like 4 or 5 seconds of silence. And she was like, wait, you mean like done? Or like you want a different role in the company? What do you mean by done here? And I was like, no, I think I just like don't want to be here anymore. I think I'm over it. And to her credit, and I probably felt comfortable with this because we had a good, like I probably felt like I could, subconsciously like utter that because we had a good relationship and it was really built on trust. She goes, okay, well, and we probably had a little bit of like a few back and forth words about it, but then she was like, all right, make sure, remember this is December 3rd. She goes, make sure this is what you want. If it is, give me your resignation on December 16th and put in your 2 weeks notice then. You'll collect a paycheck until the end of the month.
That's really nice for her.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, like figure your stuff out. Like if you think you're she's like, look through my network. If you need an introduction, if you need a reference, if you're gonna take an interview, tell people you're on a meeting, that you're on a sales meeting, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so, 2 weeks went past and I was like, yes, this is what I want. So I turned in my 2 weeks on the 16th. My last day was the 31st. All of that was a tangent, by the way.
No,
Just saying,
that's a good
That's like the
story.
That's a
perfect movie
great.
scene.
Yeah,
you know,
it really was.
Conflict, change.
It was a great story. For folks who don't know, PIP is a performance enhancement plan, just so everyone knows what it is. But no, we did put you, we did challenge you accidentally quitting, and you established it very well. So I agree, you did accidentally quit. You kind of blurted out like something you've been thinking and feeling for probably a while. And then
Sure.
like you said, because you're in a trusting environment, you're like, actually, I think I'm done. And you're just
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
So I do that, and then I kind of like, the next month and a half or 2 months, I kind of said I was like fun employed, like did a little traveling. I took a couple job interviews actually. I kind of self-sabotaged actually myself in an interview. Like I got to like the last round and I wouldn't say self-sabotage. I told them, I was like, look, I'm pretty sure, I was like, culturally, I see a great fit. I think in this role, you're gonna want to fire me within 3 months because I think I'm gonna be doing the exact same thing I was doing at the last company.
Wow.
Hunting at NSA.
Yes.
Why wouldn't I want to work at the NSA?
Exactly. So then that's when I ended up starting I had a side project that became my first business, which really it was by no means successful aside from like getting some followers out of it. But I did all of that without a plan and I wouldn't recommend it to anyone else.
yeah.
I also, then and even now, then I was single, so I had no like obligations to anyone else. Now I'm married, I don't have kids, I don't have any pets. You have kids, you're married, you have at least one dog, right? You have multiple. So I think that decision, Jen, is like, I think there's a lot more weight behind it. So did you do like a spreadsheet calculation of like what needs to happen to make it work?
Boy, when we talk about my major, you'll know why I didn't do spreadsheet calculations. No, I did not. It was more of, I will say one of the benefits of being an individual contributor in sales for 18 years is all of the commission checks put you in a financially stable place to go off on your own, right? So I could have never done what I did if I was 2 years into selling. It just was really good about saving my money because I knew eventually I wouldn't want to be sitting every December 31st like looking at a DocuSign, so I knew long term I wanted to do something. It really wasn't planned out though, and I think that's the only way I would have done it. If I had started planning and been really thoughtful, let me build my spreadsheets, I think I would have talked myself out of it because I would have been way too risk averse. To your point, I think one of the reasons I felt confident going off is because I had already had some sales kickoffs that I had booked, and I knew I wouldn't be at zero, right? So I knew it wouldn't be what I was making before, but I felt confident I wouldn't be at zero. That was just my fear, is I don't want to be stuck at zero for a really long time because I knew it would screw with my confidence. Yeah, so I do agree, like you got to have something that gives you evidence of like, there's something here. It's not a total leap of faith on doing it. Exactly.
I was just about to say, momentum is like, it cures a lot of things.
You can't be like sitting there twiddling your thumbs.
Right.
You got to have like the momentum to jump into it, and then from there, it's like more feasible in your head.
Yeah. I would say success cures all, but momentum is like the next best thing because having that feeling, like feeling stuck and just like with no momentum, no money coming in or no like pipeline, it's like, that's a tough way to wake up and try to grind every day.
So one of the things then, Jen, was like you, for a while you were playing that balance of like you're Lavender, but you're also DemandJen. Mm-hmm. Now Devin, you're the reader, you're also Clary. is there ever like butting heads? Is there like, hey, like you can't take a week off to like film content? Like,
well, we didn't take a week off for the cameras. We didn't take a week off. There has, honestly, and so I'll talk about it. There's actually two things. So one, when I joined Clary, I was talking to Kyle Coleman, he recruited me, and I was really clear that one, any intellectual property is mine. I think to some people it was an elephant in the room, but to me it's not to me it's very clear. I'm rocking the merch right now. You can get the merch online if you like the merch. I'm out here doing it, so I'm not hiding anything. So
Yeah.
I mean, if anything, the clout that you bring because of the reader, there's so many eyeballs that accidentally hit Clary as a result that would never even know they exist otherwise.
And I know, and it's like, well, those people aren't buying, Clary. It's like, but they know people who are. There's no such thing as bad press, and this is not bad press by any means. I'm just bringing credibility and eyeballs. There's different perspectives and camps of thinking of like, should you even be able to have a side hustle? And then you have me who's like, damn right I have one, and I'm rocking it, and I'm doing my thing, and like we're all benefiting if we all just kind of, can agree on this one thing. But there's always different perspectives.
What? Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I think beyond the exposure that it brings, it's also like the experience. You're
100%.
There's so much experience just from doing, a production like this, or all of the content that you're producing, all of the writing that you're doing. I mean, that shows a tremendous amount of initiative, and all of that initiative brings brings experience, and all of that experience brings results. I would imagine. I think that's what helped me when I left, or before I left. G2 was very on board with it.
I'm actually happy that it's grown to a place where my wife is able to quit her job last week at time of recording. So she's gonna join the reader, part-time, full-time, help with the kids. But yeah, it's cool, like to see your project, now she's CFO, COO, and some other OO because she runs the show. But it's cool to see now she's got something.
She's the real chief reader, let's be real.
Facts, she's cutting checks, approving budgets, she does the whole thing. She's like, you get to go be creative in the face, but I'm deciding, the back office stuff. But it's cool to have ownership of that, right? I think that's the whole point of entrepreneurship is it comes with the fear and the uncertainty, but it comes with a lot of pride and control. And it's it's you wake up every day and it's on you, it's on me, it's on us as a partnership. So to me, it's awesome. I'm kind of get the best of both worlds, where I get the corporate, experience, and then I also get to do the more creative stuff on the side.
I think what he's saying is dinner's on him.
Yeah, I thought that was assumed. I do empathize, I think, with companies that hire people like you. I say that's a really offensive way to say it, but there's no playbook for it, right? It's how do you keep that person happy, recognizing that if they leave, it's probably really bad for the company, right? And so it's you've got to acknowledge that they have this thing that drives their passion and they want to invest in it, but I don't know that there's a playbook for that, of how you treat employees like that.
There's not, and it's funny because I hire for it. I want people who have side hustles, because it's really if you think about what a side hustle is, it's really a passion that you've monetized.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right? Because and it's not a great example, but I was imagine you're hiring someone and you're but we don't do side hustles here. It's let's say you're hiring Eddie. Eddie's well, I like to, I restore old cars in my spare time. It's oh, that's cool. It's yeah, and me and my dad kind of a little business, we sell them. Well, now that's a side hustle.
Right.
And now that's a distraction, right? And it's well, no, cars and what we do here are totally different. I'm well, we don't even sell to, but you don't sell to who I'm not eating off your plate and vice versa. So it's tough because there's times I want to share online and think, but then it's almost don't be too loud about the situation. You know what I mean? It's don't if you have a good thing, it's kind of tough to be let me stir the pot and share this really bold perspective that I have on. I think people with side hustles probably make the best employees, honestly.
I have to imagine whoever, I don't know whether it was spoken or unspoken, but during your hiring process, if they see what you're doing and they get a hint that you're motivated enough with your personal stuff, they're we probably got him for some range of years. And if we're making the right bet, we're going to get the most we can out of him or her in those set number of years. And the real bet, the real safe bet, or right bet, I should say, is we trust that they're not just talented to do the thing themselves, but they're talented enough to set up the playbook so the machine can keep running once they leave.
Yeah, and that's what I always try to do. It's we're trying to build I'm not just building a team, I'm building a function, I'm building a system, because when I leave, selfishly, of course, I want there to be a little pain, because if an A player leaves, there should be some pain, but I don't want you to struggle. I don't leave companies like, F off and, now I'm doing me. It's like, I'm not opportunistic like that. But yeah, I think that's a good way to look at it. And when I hire people, I'm not saying you have to have a side hustle, but if someone like Nehal Tanani, episode 2, I hired her at Gong, and she was like, yeah, I have this podcast that I run. It's that Woke Desi. So it's about South Asian culture and like Indian culture. But I'm sitting here looking at all the people I've talked to. Some people, oh yeah, I read very good copy. Oh yeah, I do like a little this book. Someone's like, yeah, I run my own podcast and I do that on top of my job. It's like, oh, that's a new level of dedication and the experience that you're talking about. So to me, of course, there's still a conversation around like expectations and whatnot. But if you're upfront about that, to me, it's like you have an A player. You just need to like maybe open up your perspective a little bit as an employer, especially with the newer generation where they think it's pretty common and accepted.
The new generation thinks work is optional. Just kidding, Gen Z.
That's a good point, though. That's a good point, because there's never been more opportunities to do your own thing than right now. And there never will be more, tomorrow and the next day. Like, it's just going to keep on growing. Becoming a creator is going to become more and more accessible. Expressing yourself is going to become more and more accessible. So I think it's something that people need to, employers, hiring managers, they got to get used to and embrace for all the good things, There's a very small chance that it will distract, but there's a very big chance, I think, that it'll add to the overall performance.
It's weird. It's like, coming back to like the car, like fixing cars analogy, it's like if someone was like, I never miss a Chicago Cubs game, you would never see that as a negative on that person and their ability to do the job that you've hired them for. Like if someone consumes, that's okay. Once someone creates,
oh, that's interesting.
No,
That is
maybe
interesting.
not so much.
Yeah.
That's actually a really interesting point. I hadn't thought of it that way. And I think again, it's the monetization on that passion too that like makes it weird for people.
Yeah.
But the thing too is like I also am not in the camp of like I don't believe everyone should have a side hustle, and I also know everyone here had a day job that gave them the credibility and the skill set, and then at some point in time realized actually I can build and do something my own way, take that risk and go do it. So I think it's like you said, there's no playbook. It's not like I have one. It's not like it's like here's how you should do it. At best, I talk to folks like you and get advice on should you do it? What should you consider? How should you go about it? And when is it time to go all in?
Yeah. And those employers are probably looking at that hire to, create that playbook a little bit, and tell them what they should be doing or what they want to be doing differently.
Yeah. We're just talking about being a creator. Let's talk about the creative process. So do you want to go? I don't know, you're on my left. Maybe that's why I'm just going to you first. But I also know like you have some of the best content and style because I think of you as like WWE and energy, and then you take hip hop and you take all of that with your own style, and then you attack tech and B2B, which is like vanilla and just like, it's like for the taking. Like if you just have some boldness and some courage. So what's your creative process? I don't know if it's like as a pitch artist or maybe as a rapper, but like how do you get started? Where's your inspiration come from?
So I think what's interesting is like, I feel like, as I've thought about this more over time, I feel like I just happen to have become a person, or have always been a person, who is not afraid to tell you what I like in life. Like everyone who knows me knows I like pro wrestling. And so that like, it's like a lot of people have interest, but they don't share it with people.
Yeah, sure.
And so like, I like wrestling, I like hip hop, there was a solid 3 years where the only thing I talked about was Hamilton.
See, I really like that because one of the things I've noticed even when I'm training or teaching is people just crave familiar. They crave things outside of B2B tech. They crave what they know. I've never thought about doing it with that much intention though, I will say, like taking that much of an inspiration from something, and you can see how much people would buy into that. Sorry, my wheels are just turning.
Yeah, you inspired
Well,
us.
it's like-
Go
It's
for it.
happening real time.
It's entertaining, but like, and more specifically, it's like storytelling. Like,
Yeah.
The same storytelling tropes appear over and over
Yeah.
again, century after century, thousands of years old. You know, we're using the same tropes in the Bible today to tell stories. So, and like that story that you told about quitting your job, like that's every movie scene ever. In every good movie,
Yeah.
if you study the scenes, there's two elements. There's conflict and there's change. Not always at the same time, but if you have one of those, then you're engaging people. People are moving forward with you. So, yeah, it's like good on you for taking something that you really love and picking it apart and dissecting it, and then applying it to a B2B context. You know, it's like the essence of creativity. It's like,
Real skill.
yeah, it's like taking those disparate things and putting them together.
Well, there's something you teach that I need to do, which is you've taught, which I know you've learned from others, which is the direct response stuff. Is like go write these long ass sales letters, like these really long, like I don't know, pages sometimes, like thousands of words if I'm not wrong. Like,
Sure.
and you're like, if you want to get this writing technique down, just copy, like literally open a notepad, handwrite the
Wow.
whole thing. And it's the only thing in your course that I haven't actually done because I was like, oh no, is that really gonna work? But I've talked to you about it since and I'm like, it's kind of the barrier I need to overcome to get to the next level, which is so weird because I've never in my life just been like, just be quiet and write word for word. But you're saying it like rewires your brain through that practice and then you can kind of like hardwire your brain to understand these patterns and then you can recreate those patterns.
Well, it's called copy work, and I think Gary Halbert coined it based on like road work. He was writing to his son from prison. He was locked up at one point, and he was writing to his son, and he was telling him to do road work. So get up in the morning and do your road work, go running, and then come back and do your copy work, just like copying these sales letters word for word by hand. And you do it by hand because it slows you down intentionally. When you slow down, you have more time to think about why the author made the decisions that they made. You know, why did he put a comma here? Why did he use this word? Why is this sentence structured this way? That's really the trick. If you type it, it doesn't work as well because you're going faster. So you have to slow down and write it.
So it's like one layer is you're just literally copying, but then the next layer is through the process of copying, you start analyzing why the thing might be the way it is.
Yeah, through the process of copying, you're slowing down, and by slowing down, you're giving yourself the time to take it all in. And I think that's the trick. That's the important part. A lot of people talk about copy working, and it's like it's kind of a mystery why it works so well. Why are we doing this? Why am I sitting down and writing it? It's really just you're tricking your brain into slowing down and not thinking as fast.
Which is one thing that
You could
I've always
probably do it
respected
with
about
a
you.
lot of things. You could probably do it with like a basketball shot, you know? Slow down the tape.
Yeah.
Just like watch it in slow motion and see what they're doing and try to emulate that. It's a pace thing.
Well, it's like mechanics too, which is like,
Yep.
I mean, its own topic, but almost like a lost art. It's like people want to get to the result as fast as possible, the growth as fast as possible. And that's one thing I've always liked about you is like you've like mastered the art of just like slowing down and like having confidence in that. Like when I slow down, all that's going off is the alarm bells in my head of what's not happening because I've stopped or felt like I've stopped because I've slowed down. But that's like one thing I'll take away from this conversation is like I need you to, well, I have the course. I need to go do this because there's something but intriguing about the mystery of something I don't really understand.
Yeah.
I'm used to like, okay, Jen, can we sit down and you can explain to me how you go about it and how you did an example and then I'll go try. And this is like, no, you just need to go be quiet, slow down, right? And like somewhere rewire your brain.
That's right. That's right.
Anything else on creative process we should cover?
So I think, Jen, you probably have good insight on this.
No, let's not be quick to judge.
I think it's true for like the stages you hit and a lot of the content you write. The thing that I feel like I hit on in the last 6 or so months, like I was looking back at like all the pitches that I've developed, and apparently over the years it's been like 300 something.
Wow. First of all, wow.
I couldn't believe that either. I was like, really? It's been that many? And aside from like the micro like formula like process I have, what I realized was like, okay, I think the real purpose here, like great storytelling, pitching, whatever you want to call it, messaging, a lot of people are like, especially, and I'm going to specifically in this moment refer to like selling a product. I think a lot of people are fixated on making sure people like know about the product. And what I realized through all of this work was like, no. The thing here is you have to make your audience feel seen. And I also think that this applies too to sale, like literally like the art of selling. You make your audience feel seen, because when you do that, now they are going to trust you with their time, their energy, their information, and then ultimately their money, like if all else goes well. And I realized that from the lens of like, okay, how does someone sell properly? How do they message effectively? But you said earlier how like, even like the process of disarming the heckler, like you're making them feel seen in the moment. And that's what I think, you know, we talked about earlier, like the polarity of content, but yours is like, it's informative without being like in your face. And I think what you're doing well, and I don't know if you're doing this intentionally or it's happening by design or subconsciously, is I think you're really effective at making your audience feel seen.
Thank you. We talked about this too. I think what I caught on to early was one of the best DMs I could get is when a leader would DM me and be like, damn, we were just talking about that problem in one of our meetings. And I was like, oh, that's like the moment I've got to create, which is how would it be expressed in a meeting? And I think, you know, so I kind of fell into it. I wouldn't say like I got it right from the start. Once I knew that was the thing, I knew that would be the thing that would spark an above the line, like C-level executive to be like, all right, we were just talking about this. I don't know if we want to buy anything just yet, but we want to learn what you know because you seem to know enough about it. And once that clicked for me, I was like, all I have to do is just keep thinking about what do those meetings sound like? What's like the last thing a VP of sales wants to hear when they walk into one of those meetings? And how do I recreate that? And I love the way you said it. It's so much more about showing them you get them versus showing them you're just like the world's best product expert on what you offer. Like that's almost something you earn. It's like a rite of passage you earn by getting the problem articulation so right. And I think when you look at content, one of the things I think is really interesting, I was thinking about when we're sitting here, is you both write about storytelling to some extent, right? Sure. But you do it so differently. And I think all of these up and coming creators, all these people that want to get into this space, I don't think there's really a point in our education where we learn a ton about storytelling. It's like one of those things you suck so bad at, and then you maybe get inspired by someone, you take a course, you do something, and you're like, oh, that's how you do it. But it's one of those skills I just don't think a lot of people naturally have. And it doesn't have to be, to your point earlier, it doesn't have to be the standard cookie cutter, like this is the story arc, and then you do this. You both are examples of there's so many ways to get after it.
It's like that Anthony Bourdain interview when he was like, the producer was asking him how he views himself. And he was like, I guess I can flatter myself and say I'm an essayist, which is kind of what I do. Kind of embarrassing, but.
I've never met an essayist.
But he's like, I guess I can flatter myself and say I'm an essayist, but really like, I'm a storyteller. And the guy was like, well, how do you tell your stories? And he's like, well, you know, I take a beat, I notice things, you know, I slow down, and then I just write about how it makes me feel, you know? And there's so many different story arcs and so many different ways to tell stories, but that's a very valid one as well. It's just notice something, notice a scene, try to connect it to a lesson, try to connect it to a problem that people are having, and then just inject how you feel. And more likely than not, other people will feel that way as well.
Do you remember, was there a time that, I don't know if it was one instance or an aha moment where you're like, damn, I really like storytelling? Or there's something like kind of almost magical around storytelling?
I think I grew up in a house with a lot of storytelling. My dad was constantly monopolizing.
Just like being called down for dinner, but in the form of a story.
Yeah, my dad was constantly monopolizing the table.
The gas was on.
Yeah. You know, so like, you know, it was kind of around me a lot. But I was an English major. I studied literature, and narrative is a huge part of that. And so I think I just learned in school and then took what I learned and accidentally applied it to work.
Well, all good things have to come to an end.
Is this ending? Oh man.
We got to wrap.
Signal.
We got to wrap. But I want to end on kind of an aspirational note. So I'd love, quickly-ish. I'd like to know what's next for each of you individually. So, DemandJen.
What is next? Some time off, honestly. Like
Yeah.
January through March is just crazy kickoff season. I spent a lot of time away from my family. We're going on spring break this week. We're going to Austin. I'm actually looking forward to getting on a plane for a personal reason. And I think
Good for you.
that genuinely is what I'm looking forward to.
Genuine.
Demand genuinely.
Dang, that lends itself to so much branded merch and content. Like, what about you, Eddie?
I'm turning Very Good Copy into a book, into an anthology. So just trying to get through that editing work and compilation work, and then it'll be out soon.
It's called Very Good Copy, the book.
It's called Becoming a Copywriter.
Oh, it is, because all the ads I've seen is
I
like,
know. I was gonna.
the book, and I was like, right on the nose.
Yeah.
Right
Called it's called Becoming a Copywriter because it really was the way that I became a copywriter. Writing all these little articles was just my way of teaching myself, and so, the idea is if you read it, you'll get the benefit of this decades-long kind of self-education.
Love it, man. RajNATION.
I think I'm gonna make an effort to put out 1 to 2 music videos this year off of the album.
What about you?
Yeah, I was like, same question back
For
to
me,
you.
man, well, this is the second of 3 stops for the show. So Read Between the Lines hits Brooklyn in a couple weeks. So for me, it's more inspired conversations with talented people. So I'm grateful y'all make time for me when I come to the city. I know viewers and listeners are gonna learn a lot from it too. So that's what's next, finish season 1, 12 episodes, and then take that personal flight, take some summer time off and think about season 2.
Hell yeah.
Well, I want to thank everybody for hanging with us. Thanks for sharing your knowledge, wisdom, and experiences. And really want to say thank y'all for hanging out.
Thank you. This has been
Pleasure.
awesome. Yeah.
Thanks for everyone watching. Appreciate you tuning in. We'll holler at you next time.
All right, if you're still listening, you must really crave growth, and I respect that. And you don't have to wait until next week's episode for more marketing advice. There are 3 ways I can help you scale your content right now. Every Saturday morning, I publish a newsletter where you'll get content tips and strategies for growing your career, brand, and business. Subscribe now to join thousands of readers. Just tap the link in the show notes. My ebook, Content That Converts, shows you how to confidently grow your reach and audience. This expansive digital playbook, packed with tips, techniques, and examples, reveals the exact strategies and step-by-step processes for converting attention into audience growth and sales. To buy your copy, hit the link in the show notes. You're seeing a pattern. And if you'd like to sponsor this show or partner with The Reader, email me at yo@thereader.co. Yes, that's yo@thereader.co. That's a wrap for now. And if you like the show, go ahead and give us that 5-star rating on Apple. It helps us grow.